Dad, please! Stop! Don't do this! You don't have to do this! Just stop! Look at me, please! Just look at me! It doesn't have to be this way! I'm begging you, please don't, please! Why are you doing this? Why? I'm your daughter, Dad. Is paining me, Dad. Is paining me so hard. Stop, Dad. No! No, please. Emily had always known that her home was not like the others. There was no warmth in the walls, no laughter echoing through the rooms, only silence thick with resentment. She grew up watching her parents drift further apart, their love eroding like a shoreline battered by relentless waves. Her mother, Evelyn, spent most of her time buried in prayer, seeking solace in the church instead of her family. She believed that faith would heal everything, that devotion could fill the void in their home, but it never did. Her father, Richard, was once a man who tried. At least that's what Emily wanted to believe. She remembered being a little girl, clutching his hand as they walked through the busy streets, feeling like he was the strongest man in the world. But something changed as the years passed. His patience thinned, his smiles faded, and soon his presence became a ghostly shadow in their home. Evelyn hardly noticed. She was too busy chasing salvation, too lost in the scriptures to see what was right in front of her. She preached about virtue, about righteousness, but she had no idea what was happening under her own roof. She didn't see the way Richard's eyes wandered to women who weren't his wife. She didn't hear the whispered conversations on his late-night calls, the lies slipping so easily from his tongue. She didn't care enough to ask why he came home smelling of alcohol and perfume that wasn't hers. Emily saw it all. She watched as her father transformed into a man she barely recognized, spending his nights in bars, coming home in a drunken haze. And when he did return, it was never with kindness. He spoke to Evelyn with bitterness, throwing cruel words like daggers, knowing she would never fight back. She never did. Instead, she prayed harder, convinced that God would bring him back to her. But Emily knew better. She knew that prayers couldn't fix a man who didn't want to be saved. Despite it all, she was the only one who still tried to hold on to him. She was the closest to him among her siblings, the only one who still saw glimpses of the father he used to be. She hated him for what he had become, but a part of her still longed for the man who used to carry her on his shoulders, the man who once made her feel safe. Maybe that's why she always forgave him, even when he staggered through the door reeking of whiskey, even when he forgot her birthday, even when his words cut deep. Her siblings had long given up on him. They barely spoke to him anymore, treating him like a stranger in their own home. But Emily couldn't bring herself to let go, not completely. Some nights when he was too drunk to make it to his room, she would help him up, whispering soft reassurances, even though she knew he wouldn't remember them in the morning. She convinced herself that it was enough, that things wouldn't get worse. She was wrong. The night was heavy with silence, the kind that pressed against Emily's chest and made it hard to breathe. She lay curled up in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of the television in the living room where her father had been drinking again. The air was thick with the scent of whiskey, seeping through the walls like a warning she couldn't quite decipher. She had learned to ignore it, to pretend she didn't hear the clinking of bottles or the occasional slur of curses when he was too lost in his own world. Tonight felt different. A cold dread settled in her stomach, though she couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way the house felt heavier, like something unseen was lurking in the shadows. Maybe it was the way her mother had gone to bed without saying goodnight, without even acknowledging the man she had long since given up on. Or maybe it was the way her father's footsteps, usually uneven and clumsy, had gone quiet. She closed her eyes and pulled the blanket tighter around herself, trying to will away the unease. She wanted to sleep, to let the night pass like all the others, to wake up and pretend everything was normal. But then, the door creaked. Emily froze. The sound was slow, deliberate, like someone was testing the weight of the moment. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She didn't move, barely dared to breathe. Then the floorboards groaned. A shadow loomed in the doorway. Even in the darkness, she recognized the figure. She had known that silhouette her entire life. Her father. Her body stiffened as he stepped inside, the sharp tang of alcohol filling the room. Something was wrong. He wasn't mumbling drunkenly like he usually did. He wasn't cursing under his breath about things that had gone wrong that day. He was silent. The fear crawling up her spine turned to ice when he shut the door behind him. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. A cold hand gripped her throat, not physically, but with the weight of knowing. She had seen the darkness in him before, seen the rage that simmered beneath his skin when he looked at her mother with contempt. But this was something else. She sat up, her hands gripping the sheets, her voice finally breaking free. "Dad?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took a step closer, and in that moment she understood. A sharp breath hitched in her throat as she scrambled back, pressing herself against the headboard. "Please," she whispered, not knowing if she was begging him or the universe to stop whatever was about to happen. But the universe was silent. The next moments blurred together in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The weight of him, the sickening stench of alcohol mixed with sweat, the crushing force of fear paralyzing her limbs. She fought, but he was stronger. She screamed, but the walls swallowed her cries. And then, it was over. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, her body broken, her mind unraveling. He was gone. The door was slightly ajar, a cruel reminder that nothing had been locked, that she had never truly been safe in this house. The world felt different now, warped into something she no longer recognized. She could hear the faint hum of the television still playing in the living room. The same world, the same night, except she wasn't the same. Tears burned her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Crying wouldn't undo what had been done. It wouldn't erase the way her father's breath had felt against her skin, the way his hands had left bruises that would never truly fade. She wanted to scream, but there was no one to hear her. No one would believe her. Not her mother, who only saw what she wanted to see. Not her siblings, who had long since stopped caring about anything that happened in this house. And certainly not the world, which had taught her that men like her father, respected, well-spoken men, didn't do things like this. She was alone. And she didn't know if she would ever feel whole again. Emily woke up the next morning feeling like a stranger in her own body. The sunlight streamed through the window, touching her skin like a cruel reminder that the world hadn't stopped. Everything outside was the same, birds chirping, the distant hum of passing cars, the sound of her mother shuffling around the kitchen. But inside her, everything was broken. She curled up tighter, wrapping her arms around herself, trying to disappear into the blankets. Her body ached, but it was nothing compared to the weight in her chest. It crushed her, made it hard to breathe, hard to think. The night before played in her mind like a haunting whisper she couldn't shut out. No matter how tightly she closed her eyes, she could still feel it, the roughness, the hands that weren't supposed to touch her, the betrayal that burned deeper than any wound. Her door was slightly open just as he had left it. A reminder, a warning. She wanted to get up and slam it shut, lock herself away from everything, but she couldn't move. If she moved, it would feel real. A knock at the door made her flinch. Her mother's voice followed, light and distracted, like every other morning. "Emily, come for breakfast." She didn't respond. Her mother sighed, already losing interest. "You'll be late for school." School. The thought of it made her stomach turn. Walking the halls, sitting in a classroom, pretending she was still the same girl she had been yesterday, it felt impossible. How could she act normal when she felt like she was falling apart? She heard her mother's footsteps fade away, and she slowly sat up, wincing at the pain that shot through her. When she finally forced herself out of bed, she avoided the mirror. She didn't want to see the girl staring back at her, didn't want to meet the hollow eyes that held too many secrets. Downstairs, her father was sitting at the table, reading the newspaper like nothing had happened. Her breath hitched, and she froze at the bottom of the stairs. He looked up at her, his expression unreadable. For a second, she thought she saw something: guilt, hesitation. But then it was gone, replaced with the same detached indifference he always wore. "Morning," he said, like he hadn't shattered her world just hours ago. Her throat tightened. She couldn't look at him, couldn't sit across from him, pretend everything was fine. She turned and walked straight past the table, ignoring the food her mother had set out. "Aren't you eating?" her mother asked, frowning. Emily shook her head. "Not hungry?" Her mother sighed. "You've been acting strange lately. What's wrong with you?" She wanted to scream, to break something, to demand how her mother didn't see it, how she couldn't feel that something had changed. But she said nothing. Because who would believe her? Her father had built a life of control, of appearances. He knew how to smile just enough in front of people, how to act like the perfect husband, the doting father. Her mother, so blinded by her own world, wouldn't even consider it. Emily could already hear the words if she tried to say the truth. "Are you crazy? Your father would never do that. You must have misunderstood something. You must be lying." The thought of it made her stomach twist. So she buried it. She went to school. She smiled at her friends. She answered the teachers when called on. She pretended. But the secret festered inside her like poison. Days passed, then weeks. She started to feel sick, nauseous in the mornings. She convinced herself it was stress, that her body was just reacting to the trauma. But then her mother noticed. "You've been throwing up a lot," she said one evening, eyeing Emily suspiciously. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Emily's blood ran cold. She shook her head. "It's nothing. I'm fine." Her mother's gaze lingered. "Are you sure?" But she didn't push further. Emily wanted to believe it would go away, that the sickness was temporary. But it didn't stop. And deep down, a fear she wasn't ready to face crept into her bones. Then, one evening, her mother walked into her room holding a pregnancy test. "Take it," she ordered, her voice sharp. Emily's hands trembled as she held the small plastic stick. She wanted to scream, to throw it away, to run. But there was nowhere to go. Minutes felt like hours as she waited for the result. And when the second line appeared, dark and undeniable, the world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Her mother snatched it from her hands, staring at it in horror. "Who?" she whispered. "Who did this to you?" Emily opened her mouth, but no words came. She looked at her mother, at the desperate need for an answer in her eyes. But she knew. She knew the moment she spoke the truth, everything would change. So she stayed silent, and the secret buried in fear only grew. The air in the house had shifted. The moment the pregnancy test revealed the truth, an eerie silence settled between Emily and her mother, thick and suffocating. Her mother's fingers trembled as she held the test, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding so violently she thought it might shatter her ribs. "Who?" Her mother's voice was sharp, almost desperate. "Who did this to you?" Emily opened her mouth, but no words came. Her mother grabbed her arm, shaking her. "Tell me, Emily. Tell me now." The pressure was unbearable. Every second stretched endlessly, her mother's eyes digging into her like daggers. But how could she say it? How could she form the words that would destroy everything? "I dot." The truth clung to her throat like poison. "I don't know." Her mother stepped back as if slapped, disbelief twisting her features. "You don't know?" she echoed, voice laced with growing suspicion. "Emily, don't lie to me." Tears burned in Emily's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She couldn't. Her mother paced the room, mumbling to herself, hands clenched into fists. This can't be happening. This can't be real. Then suddenly she stopped. Her expression darkened, her voice dangerously low. "Was it someone from school?" Emily shook her head quickly. Her mother's eyes narrowed. "Then who?" Silence. "Who, Emily?" she cried, voice breaking. Emily looked away, her entire body shaking. She felt trapped, like a wounded animal cornered with no escape. She wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but there was nowhere to go. Then her mother's face twisted with a terrible realization. She went still, eyes wide with horror. "No," she whispered, almost to herself. She stepped forward, grabbing Emily's shoulders. "Tell me it's not your father." Emily's breath hitched. The room spun. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence was louder than any confession. Her mother staggered backward as if struck, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh, God," she gasped, shaking her head violently. "No, no, it can't be." Emily's legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed onto the bed, sobs racking her body. It was out now. The truth, the one she had tried so desperately to bury, lay bare between them, raw and undeniable. Her mother turned away, gripping her head as though trying to force the reality out of her mind. She let out a strangled cry, half agony, half rage. He wouldn't, he couldn't. But deep down she knew. The way he had changed, the nights he came home drunk, the way Emily had withdrawn, her smiles fading into something hollow and distant. The pieces had been there all along, but she had refused to see them. And now, it was too late. The front door slammed. Both of them jumped. Heavy footsteps echoed through the house. He was home. Emily's heart seized in her chest, terror locking her in place. Her mother turned sharply toward the door, her breath coming in frantic bursts. Then, without warning, she grabbed Emily's wrist, pulling her up. "Go," she whispered, voice tight with fear. Emily's feet barely moved beneath her, her entire body trembling. The footsteps grew closer. Her mother shoved her toward the bathroom. "Lock the door, now!" Emily stumbled inside, hands fumbling to turn the lock, just as his voice rang through the house. "Where are you?" She pressed herself against the door, clamping a hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. Muffled voices, raised tones, then shouting, then a crash. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, biting down on her knuckles to keep from crying out. The house trembled with chaos, her mother screaming, her father roaring something unintelligible. More crashes. Something, someone, slammed against the door. Then suddenly, silence. A moment later, footsteps pounded toward the front door. The door yanked open, and then, nothing. Emily didn't move, didn't breathe. Minutes passed, dragging endlessly. Finally, her mother's voice came, hoarse and shaking. "Emily, he's gone." She unlocked the door with trembling fingers, stepping out into the wreckage. A broken chair, shattered glass. Her mother standing in the center of it all, her face streaked with tears, a look of disbelief etched into her features. "He ran," she whispered, eyes distant. "He ran." Emily exhaled shakily, but the relief didn't come, because deep down she knew. This wasn't over. The house was silent, but the air was thick with unspoken words, heavy with tension. Emily sat on the edge of the couch, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress so tightly her knuckles turned white. Across from her, her mother stood motionless, staring at the floor as if the answers she needed could be found in the cracks of the tiles. It had been days since he ran, days of restless nights and whispered rumors. The neighbors had started to talk, speculating why Emily's father had vanished so suddenly. But no one knew the truth except them. And they had buried it deep, refusing to say it aloud. Until now. There was a knock at the door, sharp and urgent. Emily flinched. Her mother hesitated for only a second before pulling the door open. 2 police officers stood there, their faces unreadable. Behind them, a man in a neatly pressed suit. Social services. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. "Mrs. Taylor?" one of the officers asked. "We need to speak with you and your daughter." Her mother stepped aside, her movements stiff and slow, as if her body had suddenly become too heavy. The officers entered, their presence making the small house feel even smaller. The suited man cleared his throat. "We have some information," he said carefully, his eyes shifting between them. "Your husband, He hesitated as if considering his words. "We found him." Emily's breath caught. Her mother swayed slightly. "Where?" The officer exchanged a glance with his partner before answering. "He was caught trying to cross the border. He's in custody now." Emily's stomach twisted. Her mother exhaled sharply, her shoulders sagging. "He ran," she whispered, almost to herself, "and now they have him." But the officer's face remained serious, unreadable. There was more. Emily felt it. "What?" Her mother's voice was barely above a whisper. "What aren't you telling me?" The officer hesitated before pulling out a manila folder. He handed it to her mother, his expression dark. "We conducted a deeper investigation. There are more victims." The words hit like a thunderclap. Emily's blood turned to ice. Her mother's hands shook as she opened the folder. Photos, documents, a list of names. Emily leaned forward, her breath shallow. Young girls, women, some familiar, some strangers, but all connected by the same horror. Her mother gasped, her fingers flying to her lips. "Oh my God," she choked. "Oh my God." Emily's vision blurred. The room tilted. She had thought it was just her, thought she was alone in this nightmare, but she wasn't. Her father's crimes ran deeper than she had ever imagined. He had destroyed lives, shattered families. And all this time, he had hidden in plain sight, pretending to be someone he wasn't. Emily wanted to scream, to run, to erase every trace of him from her memory. The officer's voice cut through the silence. "We need you both to testify." Her mother shook her head, still struggling to process. "No," she whispered. "No, we can't." But Emily straightened, her hands clenched into fists. "I will," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Her mother turned to her, eyes wide with fear. "Emily." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. She had been silenced for too long, lived in fear for too long, but not anymore. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. The night was thick with silence, but Emily felt the weight of something closing in. The walls of the courtroom had held her in for hours, her voice trembling as she recounted everything. Every nightmare, every betrayal, every moment she had spent suffocating under the weight of a secret that was never hers to keep. The truth had spilled out like blood on the floor, irreversible, undeniable. And now the world knew. Her father had sat there, his face unreadable, his eyes locked on hers. Not with remorse, not with shame, but with something else, something darker. It sent ice down her spine. Now, as she walked through the dimly lit parking lot, her mother beside her, the cold air biting at her skin, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The trial wasn't over, but the damage had already been done. The truth was out, and there was no burying it again. A shadow moved. Emily's breath caught. Her mother stopped walking, her fingers tightening around Emily's wrist. "Did you hear that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Another movement, the sound of shoes scuffing against pavement. Emily turned, her pulse hammering. The street was empty, but she wasn't convinced. A car door slammed in the distance. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, then too late. A figure stepped from the darkness. Her father. Emily froze, her heart seizing in her chest. His suit was gone, replaced with dark clothes, his face sharper, thinner, eyes burning with something wild. He shouldn't be here. He was supposed to be in custody. Her mother gasped, stepping in front of Emily. "Stay away from her," she hissed. But he only smiled, a slow, unnerving smile. "You ruined everything," he murmured, his voice too calm, too steady. "You think you've won?" He took a step closer. "This isn't over." Emily's body screamed for her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The world felt too small, too suffocating. A flash of headlights. Tires screeched. "Emily, go!" her mother shouted, shoving her back. But before she could react, before she could even take a breath, the night erupted. A gunshot. And then, darkness. To be continued. If you were in this situation, what would you do? Would you forgive him later or disown him? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss part 2 of this story.